Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Paul Bauer. He is a certified master life coach and NLP practitioner with a specialty in helping men transform their relationships and reignite passion in their marriages. Welcome to the show, Paul.
AJ, thank you so much for having me, man. I'm really excited to be here. Let's rock this show today, okay? Let's get this energy level up. That's what I'm talking about.
Absolutely, absolutely. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk about. We'll be talking about how one can show their masculine presence, how they can transform their relationships, how they should not rock their boats, but rather, do something good about it with a rocking show episode like this. So we'll come to all this, but first, Paul, a little bit more about yourself, your background, your journey, so that people know who they are listening to.
Yes, I'm glad you asked that. So just to tell people who I am and where I came from, I grew up in a small town in Colorado called Conifer. It's if anyone's ever been to Colorado, it's about an hour outside of Denver. Small mountain community, played in the woods. I used to play Indiana Jones with my friends, played Ninja Warrior, stuff like that. In high school, I was always a little bit of a ladies' man. I never had any problems getting girlfriends. I went to 4 proms. Can you believe that, AJ? I went to 4 proms when I was in high school. I lost my virginity at 16, and when I was 18, I left for the Navy. And so I joined the military, and about 2 years into that experience, I met my now ex-wife. And a big learning experience for me from that was that we rushed into it. We barely knew each other. We knew each other for less than a year when we decided to elope and get married. And one of the biggest things that young men make, one of the biggest mistakes they make is that they rush into relationships, they overlook red flags, and a lot of that sort of thing, if they just learned how to do that, they would avoid lots of problems, right? Well, I didn't do that. And we stayed together we were married for 14 years. We had 2 children together, but the last half of that marriage was miserable, AJ, just absolutely miserable. Constant arguments, constant nagging. We ended up sleeping in different bedrooms near the end there. And at the end, when she finally served me with divorce papers, I honestly felt a tremendous relief. I found myself just glad that she did that, because I never would have done that. I was one of those guys that I would have never quit. I never would have quit the marriage. I never would have cheated on her. None of that. So I was just resolved to be miserable. Like, that's just how life is. And so when she served me with those divorce papers, I found myself back on the dating circuit for the first time in 15 years. I was fat, AJ. I was 50 pounds overweight. I had lost my Riz. It was so frustrating to me, because in high school, I found it so easy to get dates and meet girls. But now that I haven't been in practice in 15 years, I didn't know what I was doing. So I floundered around the dating circuit for 11 months until I finally met this gal that took pity on me. And I ended up in a relationship with her for 4.5 years. And while that relationship was okay, one of the things I noticed is that my behavior was the same as it was when I was married. I didn't learn my lesson. A lot of people think, okay, the solution is divorce, but they never work on themselves. So they get divorced, and then they find out that they get into the same relationship with the next person, and they have the same problems. Like, they never do the work. So after that relationship, I had lost all the weight. I found it easy to get dates, but my problem was that I couldn't keep girls around. And I was like, man, I'm doing something wrong with women, because the 2 biggest relationships I had in my adult life failed. I can't keep girls around. I'm doing something wrong. So I really took a deep dive in sexual dynamics, intersexual dynamics, understanding attraction. I started reading every book I could on it. I ended up in a men's group, a free online men's group when I was on Facebook with a bunch of other guys that were leveling up and doing the same thing. They're just working on themselves, trying to understand women better. And out of that group, I started my podcast, the Come On Man podcast. And from there, I grew the podcast to over 24,000 subscribers on YouTube. I got certified as a master life coach and a master NLP practitioner. And then I started coaching men. And I've also, in that time, wrote 2 books. And now I'm in the healthiest relationship I've ever been in. I've been with the same woman for the last 4 years. It's absolutely effortless because I understand what she responds to now. I understand what makes women tick. I understand what boosts attraction, what kills attraction. And so now I just want to help other men. That's my mission now, AJ, is I just want to help other men. And so I really like helping men that are in failing relationships because I don't want them to have to go through what I went through when they can do the work and save what they have.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for that, Paul. Now, to understand from you, you talk about presence, masculine presence in a relationship, and then you also talk about red flag. So, where is the fault? Is it the lack of masculine presence in a relationship, or is it the red flags you did not see? Help us understand both these things.
It was both, AJ. It was both. I didn't understand how to spot red flags because, like a lot of guys, when you get into a relationship, you get Twitter pated, you get emotionally lost in the experience. You fall in love quickly, and this girl can do no wrong. So any problematic behavior that she might have, you overlook it because, oh, I'm just so in love with her. I don't care. I can fix this, right? A lot of guys think I can fix this. So that was one thing. And then the other thing is a dominant masculine presence. And that term actually, I got that from my friend RP Thor. He wrote a book called A Dominant Masculine Presence. And my latest book that I just wrote, The Essential Skills of a Masculine Presence, is based off of the 7 skills of a dominant masculine presence that he laid out in his book, which are physicality, psychology, presence, problem solving, prosperity, power, and passion. Say that 5 times fast. And so my friend Thor, he wrote that book, and he wanted a bunch of other guys in the men's self-help space to write other books in this series based on these 7 principles. So my book is in the skill of psychology, and it's under paradigm. But one thing that a lot of men don't understand is that for there to be healthy polarity and attraction in a relationship, the man has to set the tone and lead. And this sort of comes from our evolutionary biology, our evolutionary programming, our evolutionary psychology. Women typically want a guy that they look up to in some way. And if they aren't looking up to this guy in some way and see him as someone with higher value, they lose respect for that man. And women can't love a man that they don't respect. And so a big problem, at least in the United States, AJ, I don't know what it's like in India. I've never been there, but a big problem in the United States is that men aren't taught to be men anymore. We're taught to be more emotionally vulnerable, to share our feelings more. And what tends to happen is men start to defer to their woman's authority because we're also taught that it's equal partnership. You know, we're supposed to have equality and it's supposed to be an equal partnership. But the thing is, when men have that paradigm, they stop leading the relationship. They start deferring to her authority. And next thing you know, they're handing the keys to the car over to her and she's driving. And then she doesn't trust you to drive that car again. So all of what I try to do is get guys back into their masculine presence and learn how to set boundaries, how to set the tone, take the lead, be more decisive. All that kind of stuff goes in hand with having more of a dominant masculine presence.
Absolutely, Paul. So for a guy, it is very difficult because you got to live in the modern times, but you got to behave like in the traditional times. How do you do that? If you exert too much like the old times, you might even go to jail. How does it work then on the ground?
Well, that's the thing. So there is a difference between having a dominant masculine presence and being domineering, right? So being domineering is what's going to get you in trouble. That's what's going to land you in jail. That's where your wife steps out of line and you give her the old, 1-2, and you don't want to do that. You don't have to do that. But if you are leading, if you are communicating from a position of authority, you're being decisive, you're not asking your woman what she wants to do, you're making decisions based on what's good for the relationship. Now you can take what she has to offer under advisement, and see, that's the big difference, right? That's how you do this while still maintaining a sort of a modern relationship. You are the leader of the relationship, but you take her advice. You understand that she might have some good ideas, and there's no reason not to go with her ideas, right? So that's the difference between being domineering and saying, no, we're doing it, it's my way or the highway, or just being the leader, right? And what you'll find is that 99.9% of the time, AJ, what I've found is that women in America, they are taught to be boss women, so they are very much in their masculine already. And that works great in the career field because they have to compete with other men. But when they get home at the end of the day, they've made thousands of decisions. They don't want to make decisions. So when a man just says, you know what, honey, I want steak for dinner tonight. Go grab your shoes. Let's go get some steak. They're just happy to do it. They're like, man, I don't have to think about dinner. This is wonderful. And that's how you get your woman to relax into her feminine. And women, a lot of times they might fight that, but once they experience that, they go, oh yeah, you're absolutely right. you're absolutely right. So yeah, the big problem here in America nowadays, though, is that a lot of guys don't do that. A lot of guys are letting their wife run the show. They call her the boss. And so then they end up in a situation where they have, no physical intimacy anymore. And, these guys, they start feeling rejected. They're feeling unwanted. That leads to feelings of inadequacy and disrespect. There's a loss of emotional connection, which leads to loneliness. So there's a lot of guys out there that are just frustrated, and they have a lot of resentment for their wives. And if they would just learn how to take the lead and set the tone, they could turn all this stuff around.
Right. Take the lead. So what is this taking the lead? Means taking decisions or thrusting your decisions on your partner?
You're the one that's trying to be the more decisive one, right? So I love using the example of what do you want to eat tonight? Because that is that's the biggest stressor that we have here in America, right? Like the husband goes, honey, what do you want to eat tonight? And she goes, I don't know. What do you want to eat? Because she doesn't want to make decisions, so she throws it back in your lap. And then the men get really frustrated. They're like, gosh, she can't make up her mind. And the thing is that these guys, they're just trying to make their wife happy. But they don't understand that her picking the place isn't what makes her happy. Her not having to make the decision is what makes her happy. And you just being decisive and setting the tone and leading and just making those stupid decisions for her so she doesn't have to, and she can just relax, show up, and look hot. Like that's all they really want at the end of the day. It's so funny.
Right. So taking decisions is what a very important thing is, because it can take a lot of mind effort into all those things. And after days, very difficult day, nobody wants to get into it, by either man or woman. But yes, if man takes the lead, then women finds it easy, and easily they will accept it. Now, let's look at these two things you talk about: self-limiting beliefs. Whose self-limiting belief? Is it the men or the women? A man may not have self-limiting belief, but the women may have. But it all comes down to a man. How does he deal with that? Should he be just continue to look at himself, but he's never in a position to tell the other party?
Well, I'll tell you what. So self-limiting beliefs are basically any kind of belief that keeps you stuck where you're at, keeps you from growing, keep you from moving forward. A lot of guys, when I say, hey, you need to set the tone and take the lead and pick I love using the dinner thing, right? You need to tell your wife what you're having for dinner. You need to pick the place. a lot of guys have this self-limiting belief that if I do that, she'll get mad at me. And so they won't do that because they're afraid of getting in trouble with their wife. They're afraid of getting yelled at. They're afraid of unnecessary conflict. And they're just trying to tiptoe through their marriage without getting into any kind of scuffle. And that's just no way to go through a relationship. But what you'll find is that anything that when you get outside your comfort zone, if it screams in your head, oh, we can't do this, there's no way this will work, right? That's a self-limiting belief, and you need to challenge that. And so when I tell guys, hey, look, don't take my word for it. Just try it. Next time the dinner debate comes up, just pick a place. If it doesn't matter where you want to go, then it doesn't matter what place you pick. So just pick a place you like to go and say, hey, honey, we're going to this restaurant tonight. And 9 times out of 10, she'll say, okay, yeah, sounds good. And then one small time out of a million, she'll say, I don't like that place. So this is where you can say, well, honey, do you have a better suggestion? And if she says no, say, okay, well, I'm going to this restaurant. You're welcome to join me. And then that way you're not controlling her. You're giving her the option. But I've never gotten to that point. Ever since I started practicing that, I only had women say, yeah, that sounds awesome, because they don't want to have to be the ones that are deciding things.
Absolutely. And you talk about common relationship pitfalls. What are these pitfalls? Is there a do's and don'ts list that you have, Paul?
Well, I don't have a specific do's and don'ts list. It really does come down to a woman's hypergamous nature. And I don't know if you're familiar with hypergamy, but women have this, their sexual strategy is what we call hypergamy, where they're looking for their best possible option in a man. And they like a guy who's fun, exciting, ambitious. He's a go-getter, but they also like a guy that, likes to pet puppies and can take care of children, right? So we call that, alpha. Well, I don't want to use bad language here, but we call that alpha and beta traits. And women want both, and ideally in the same man. And so what typically happens in a relationship, we've seen this, and I learned this from a book called Practical Female Psychology. And I put this information into an ebook, but we call it the betatization process. And what happens is over time, it's a 5-step process where guys will slowly, they usually start out pretty attractive in a relationship, and that's usually what draws women to these guys in the first place. And they're doing fun, exciting stuff, and they're dating, and he's seducing her, and she's really enthusiastic, with the bedroom activity. And then slowly over time, she starts testing him. And we call these frame checks or congruency checks. And she'll start throwing these little playful barbs at him to see how he reacts. And a lot of guys just don't know how to deal with that. So they react in a negative way. So then she starts questioning his ability to lead this relationship. And she starts looking at him like, okay, maybe he's not the man I thought he was. So then she starts to get this guy to start opening up more. Hey, I need you to be more vulnerable. Start telling me more about your stuff. So, open up to me, be more emotional with me. And so guys will fall into that trap, and they will just act like women and just regurgitate or, word vomit all their emotional problems on their woman. And then the more they do that, women see these guys as weak, right? So then she starts putting them to work. Hey, can you hold my purse? Can you, can you go help my sister move? All that kind of stuff. And then the more you keep doing that sort of thing, the more she starts seeing you as weak, the less attractive she sees you, and the more she starts pulling away in the relationship. And that's the biggest problem we're seeing out here.
Right. But old traditional guys were chivalrous. Doing some work told by your wife, why is it not so great in today's time? Holding purse or anything. I want to understand the difference between this work in today's time and the traditional days where actually chivalry was much more in currency.
Yeah, see, I think the difference is nowadays a lot of men are doing what we call covert contracts, where they're doing these nice things for their wife, hoping to keep her happy. We have this phrase here in America of happy wife, happy life. And so all these guys are doing are just trying to make their wife happy all the time. And the thing is that that doesn't make women happy. There's nothing wrong with being chivalrous. In fact, in my first book, I talk about, opening doors for your wife or your girlfriend. That kind of stuff is good. And in fact, when other women see you do that and they point that out to your wife of how jealous they are, your wife actually sort of starts getting competition anxiety, which actually helps boost your attraction level in her eyes. So there's lots of these good reasons to do some of that stuff, but there's a fine line, right? There's some nuance to this because some of the stuff she's asking you to do it, and if you don't set boundaries on certain things, she will see that you're being weak. So it's okay to occasionally tell your wife or girlfriend no. But a lot of guys are just afraid to tell their wife or girlfriend no. But if they just stand up to them on occasion, the wife goes, they might throw a fit for a few minutes or whatever, but you'll find that after an hour or so, they start coming around. They're like, you know what? You told me no. I kind of like that, because most guys don't tell women no nowadays. And it really sets you apart.
Right, right, Paul. Let's learn a bit more from your book, The Essential Skill of a Masculine Presence, Psychology Paradigm. Who is this book for? Is it for only men or is it also for women?
This book so here's the book right here. This book really is for men. It's really designed for men. Women could read it and they would actually get a lot of good information out of it. But really what we're trying to do is help men develop more of that dominant masculine presence, more of a leadership role. So there's a whole chapter on just relationships, but there's more than just relationships in this book. There's general leadership. So if you are someone that is a manager of people at work, this is the book for you, because there's a whole section on how to just be a good leader, how to lead people effectively. There's a lot of, I pulled a lot of information from Jocko Willink in this book. A lot of guys have bad paradigms when it comes to money and money management. I talk about that kind of stuff in this book. But yeah, it's really written for a male audience.
Right. And is it only for the personal relationships at home, or is it also there is something for the workplaces where you got to show your masculine presence?
It's for all areas of your life. So yeah, it'll work in your personal relationships with women. It'll work in your personal relationships with your friends. It'll work in your work relationships with your bosses and your coworkers.
Right, Paul. Right. There's much to learn, as I said, from you. And then there is your podcast where a lot of people can learn from. Come On Man podcast. You are the podcast host of that. Help us understand a bit about that thing.
Yeah, so I started that in 2020 out of that men's group that I mentioned at the beginning of the show. And when I first started that podcast, it was really a podcast for the men of that men's group. So I would have the different guys from the men's group on and just tell their stories about why they ended up in the group, why they were studying the same material I was studying, what they were trying to get out of it, that sort of thing. And it was, I had that podcast. It was audio only for the first maybe 6 months of the show. And then I decided to put it on YouTube and try to expand out that way. I ended up growing a pretty big TikTok following, and that helped create, really get eyes on the podcast. And so we've been going for about 4 years now. I used to have lots of different guests on. I used to interview some of the biggest names in my personal industry. So guys like Rollo Tomasi, Rich Cooper, George Bruno, a bunch of other guys from the space have been on the show. And then within this last year, I started moving away from the interview model, even though it's fun. I love interviewing. Do you like interviewing? I love it. I love talking to people. But I moved away from the interview model because one of my mentors, a guy named Paul Benjamin, said, you know what, Paul, you need to really showcase what you know. Absolutely. And I think solo episodes would be better for you. So I started moving more towards the solo episodes. So we've been doing that. I have episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right about the solo episode because you are a master life coach and you know about things. So why always get a guest? You be the expert of your show. You are the expert and you should, showcase that. Rest, you can always take experts whenever you want. There is, as I said, there is so much to learn from you, and I'm sure a lot of people would like to learn more about you, from you, be your client. What is the best way for them to do so?
Well, you can go to, I have a blog right here, fixedheadbedrooms.com is my blog. You can find pretty much all my stuff there. I post my podcast episodes there. You can find links to my books there. What I really want people to do, though, is check out the new book, The Essential Skills of a Masculine Presence Psychology Paradigm. If you have self-limiting beliefs that are holding you back in life, if you know consciously that you could do better in life, but for whatever reason, you can't ever make yourself do it, it's because of your paradigm. You know, our subconscious mind controls 95% of our actions, and our actions create reactions, and our reactions create our results in life. And so if you keep finding you're stuck, maybe you know you want to make more money, but you can't ever figure out how to do it. Maybe you keep ending up in bad relationships and you want to break that cycle. Maybe you have terrible relationships with your bosses and you're always getting fired and you don't know what you're doing. This book will help you. This book will help you find what limiting beliefs are holding you back, what negative paradigms are keeping you stuck, and it will help you reprogram those. So, and then if you go through the book and you want some more one-on-one help with relationships, you can go to fixedheadbedrooms.com and you can find a link at the top to book a free call with me. And I will give anybody free 30 minutes, a free clarity call where we can sit down, we talk about your problems, and then I can either tell you what's going on, give you some solutions, or I can point you in the right direction.
Absolutely. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.